In the farthest reaches of the Andromeda Galaxy, aboard a colossal spaceship known as the Crimson Veil, an alien queen stood tall on her obsidian throne. Her name was Xyrathol, ruler of the Virith species and possessor of countless secrets that could unravel the fabric of existence itself. Around her swirled a court of advisors, warriors, and scientists, their luminous eyes fixed intently on the trembling human who had been brought before them. The man's name was Selim Drake, a simple engineer from Earth's outer colonies, now standing in the presence of beings whose technology made humanity's most advanced creations look like children's toys. His heart pounded so loudly, he feared they might hear it over the hum of energy coursing through the ship. He clutched his tattered jacket tightly around him, trying to shield himself not just from the cold air but also from the piercing stares of those surrounding him. Xyrathol leaned forward slightly, her elongated frame towering above even her tallest subjects. Her voice resonated like thunder across an empty canyon when she spoke. "I need your blood, human," she declared with unwavering authority. Selim blinked rapidly, unsure if he'd heard correctly. Blood? What possible use could this otherworldly being have for something so mundane? Surely there were more sophisticated ways to extract whatever genetic material or nutrients she required without resorting to such primitive methods. Yet here he was, facing down an alien queen demanding precisely that. Before he could respond, or perhaps run screaming for the nearest exit, one of Xyrathol's advisors stepped closer. This one was named Zinker, easily recognizable by his shimmering silver exoskeleton and intricate patterns etched into his skin. Unlike many of his kind, Zinker seemed almost curious about humans, though whether that curiosity stemmed from scientific interest or some darker motive remained unclear. "Explain yourself," Selim managed to choke out after finding enough courage to speak. His voice wavered slightly, betraying the fear still gripping at his insides. Zinker tilted his head ever so slightly, studying Selim as though examining a particularly fascinating specimen under a microscope. "Your species is unique among those we've encountered," he began, speaking in flawless Standard Galactic, a universal language designed to bridge communication gaps between civilizations. "But what makes you truly remarkable lies within your very essence." Selim furrowed his brow, confusion evident on his face. "My essence? You mean my DNA?" "More than mere DNA," Zinker replied cryptically, gesturing toward the Queen. "Our Queen seeks something far greater, a key hidden within your biology, something ancient and powerful beyond comprehension." At this point, another figure emerged from the shadows. Delise, a warrior renowned throughout the Virith Empire for both her ferocity in battle and her unyielding loyalty to Xyrathol. With sleek black armor covering every inch of her lithe form, she moved silently yet commanded attention wherever she went. She positioned herself beside Zinker, arms crossed defiantly over her chest. "You will comply," Delise stated flatly, leaving no room for argument. Her tone carried the weight of someone accustomed to enforcing orders rather than requesting obedience. "Comply?" Selim thought incredulously. How exactly did they expect him to simply hand over part of himself without understanding why? But before he could voice these concerns aloud, Xyrathol raised a slender hand adorned with sharp claws, silencing everyone instantly. "There is a reason behind my request, human," she said softly, though her words echoed powerfully through the chamber. "One that may leave you breathless once revealed." And then she paused dramatically, allowing suspense to build until it hung heavy in the air like storm clouds ready to burst. Selim swallowed hard, feeling beads of sweat trickle down his temple despite the chill permeating the room. Whatever revelation awaited him next, he sensed it would change everything he thought he knew about life and death. As the silence stretched on, punctuated only by the faint hum of machinery keeping the vast ship operational, Selim found himself staring into Xyrathol's glowing eyes. They seemed to pierce straight through him, reading truths buried deep within his soul. "Finally," she continued, her voice rich with gravitas. "Long ago," she began, "before your kind walked upright upon your pale blue dot of a planet, our ancestors discovered a cosmic anomaly, a rift in space-time where dimensions collided. From this convergence emerged entities of pure energy, neither living nor dead, existing outside the constraints of reality as we understand it." Selim listened intently, captivated despite himself. The story sounded like something out of ancient mythology, yet here it was being recounted by an alien queen inside a spaceship light years away from home. "These entities," Xyrathol went on, were drawn to biological vessels capable of housing their immense power. Over millennia, they experimented with various species, seeking the perfect host. Some failed catastrophically, others thrived briefly before succumbing to instability. Until... She paused again, letting the anticipation simmer. Until they found humans, Zinker interjected smoothly, picking up where the Queen left off. Or rather, traces of humanity embedded within certain strands of DNA scattered across the cosmos. Somehow, fragments of your genetic code became intertwined with remnants of these ancient beings during their early experiments. Selim frowned, struggling to process the information. So you're saying, parts of me are connected to these things? Not directly, Zinker clarified, waving a clawed finger dismissively. But close enough that your physiology contains echoes of their essence. Echoes strong enough to unlock latent abilities dormant within our own genome. The Lys snorted derisively, clearly skeptical of how much detail was being shared with a mere human. Enough talk, she growled. He needs to understand one thing. His cooperation ensures survival, for all of us. This statement sent a shiver down Selim's spine. Survival? What did any of this have to do with ensuring anyone's safety? Before he could ask, however, Zirathul leaned back against her throne, regarding him with an expression that bordered on pity. "The reason I require your blood, Selim Drake," she murmured, her gaze never wavering, "is because it holds the potential to stabilize our entire race. Without it, we face extinction." For several moments, Selim couldn't breathe. Extinction? These majestic creatures, rulers of galaxies, feared annihilation unless they harvested something from him? It felt absurd, surreal even. Yet looking into Zirathul's earnest eyes, he realized she wasn't lying. Whatever crisis loomed over the Virith people, it must be dire indeed. "But why now?" he asked finally, finding his voice amidst the whirlwind of revelations. "If this connection has existed for eons, why suddenly does it matter?" Zinker exchanged glances with the Lys before answering. "Because recently, signs indicate the rift is reopening. If unchecked, the entities will return, bringing chaos unimaginable. Your blood acts as both anchor and shield, preventing disaster while granting us access to powers long forgotten." Suddenly, images flooded Selim's mind, visions of swirling vortexes tearing apart stars, planets crumbling under unseen forces, civilizations reduced to dust. Was this future inevitable without intervention? Could he really hold the key to averting such catastrophe? Zirathul must have sensed his turmoil because she added gently, "We do not take lightly what we ask of you. Sacrifices must be made for balance to prevail. Trust that your contribution shall not go unnoticed nor unrewarded." Despite her reassurances, doubt gnawed at Selim. How could anyone trust promises made by aliens whose motives remained largely mysterious? Still, something about the urgency in her tone resonated deeply within him. Perhaps it was desperation mirrored in his own reflection whenever faced with impossible choices back on Earth. Just as Selim wrestled internally with whether to trust the alien queen's plea, a sudden commotion erupted near the entrance of the Grand Chamber. A group of armored guards rushed in, dragging along a battered figure clad in ragged robes. The newcomer struggled weakly against their grip, his face obscured by matted hair and grime. "Another intruder!" one of the guards barked, shoving the captive forward roughly. As the disheveled man stumbled into view, Selim gasped audibly. Despite the dirt and bruises, there was no mistaking those familiar features. This was none other than Professor Elric Vale, renowned xenobiologist and Selim's mentor from years past. Elric raised his head slowly, squinting through swollen eyelids until recognition dawned. "Selim," he croaked hoarsely, disbelief coloring his voice. "Is that really you?" Before Selim could respond, the Lys strode forward menacingly, her blade-like fingers twitching impatiently. "Silence!" she snapped. Turning sharply toward Zirathul, she added, "This human possesses knowledge dangerous to our mission. He must be dealt with swiftly." "No," Selim blurted instinctively, stepping protectively in front of Elric. All eyes turned to him, surprise evident even among the stoic Virith. Taking a deep breath, Selim steeled himself. "You can't harm him. not without hearing what he knows first. Zyrathol regarded him curiously, tilting her head slightly. And why should we grant leniency based solely on your word? Because, Selim countered firmly, if anyone understands the complexities of interspecies genetics, it's Professor Vale. Maybe he can shed light on why my blood holds such significance, or offer alternatives less invasive than extraction. A low murmur rippled through the assembled crowd, some nodding thoughtfully while others muttered dissent. Zinker stepped closer, scrutinizing Elric intently. Very well, he conceded after a moment's consideration. But speak quickly, old man. Time grows short. Elric nodded gratefully, wincing as he straightened up. Clearing his throat, he began recounting tales of clandestine research conducted decades earlier, experiments involving ancient artifacts believed linked to the same dimensional rift described by Zyrathol. According to Elric, fragments of these relics contain traces of organic matter remarkably similar to human DNA sequences. As Elric delved deeper into technical jargon, Selim noticed subtle shifts among the Virath listeners. Skeptical expressions softened, replaced by intrigue bordering on awe. Even the Lys appeared momentarily engrossed, her usual scowl easing slightly. However, just as hope began blossoming within Selim's chest, a shrill alarm pierced the air, sending vibrations rippling through the metallic walls. Instantly, chaos ensued. Lights flickered erratically, casting eerie shadows across the chamber floor. Guards scrambled to secure positions, weapons drawn and poised for action. "What is happening?" Zyrathol demanded sharply, rising from her throne with regal authority. One of her aides rushed forward, whispering urgently into her ear. Whatever news delivered caused her already imposing demeanor to stiffen further. "We are under attack," Zinker announced grimly, addressing both humans and fellow Virath. "An unknown force breaches our defenses. We must evacuate immediately." Panic surged through Selim as realization hit. He hadn't come this far only to perish in some interstellar skirmish. Grabbing Elric's arm, he pulled the older man upright. Together, they followed the frantic tide of bodies streaming toward supposed safety, dodging blasts of energy ricocheting wildly through corridors. Through the pandemonium, Selim caught glimpses of devastation unfolding outside viewport windows. Ships resembling jagged shards of obsidian darted unpredictably, firing indiscriminately at anything bearing resemblance to Virath design. Each explosion illuminated the darkness briefly, revealing fleeting images of destruction too horrifying to comprehend fully. Amidst the tumult, Selim spotted the Lys leading a contingent of warriors toward critical control stations. Determination etched onto her face, she shouted commands with precision honed through countless battles. Nearby, Zinker coordinated efforts via holographic interfaces, fingers dancing deftly over glowing panels. Yet amidst the organized chaos, Zyrathol remained eerily calm, observing proceedings with detached serenity. When their gazes met briefly, Selim detected something akin to sorrow lurking beneath her composed exterior. Whether directed at impending doom or regret over unresolved matters remained unclear. With each step closer to supposed refuge, questions multiplied exponentially within Selim's mind. Who orchestrated this assault? Why target the Crimson Veil specifically? And most crucially, how did any of this tie back to demands for his blood? Answers eluded him still, obscured by smoke and screams echoing endlessly through metal halls. But one truth became painfully clear. Survival hinged not merely on escaping immediate peril but unraveling mysteries entwined intricately with fate itself. As Selim and Elric were herded along with the retreating Virath forces, they found themselves shoved into a massive chamber that served as an emergency shelter. The walls shimmered faintly, pulsing with energy barriers designed to withstand external attacks. Selim's heart raced as he surveyed their surroundings. Virath soldiers armed to the teeth stood guard at every entrance, while technicians frantically worked on consoles embedded in the floor, attempting to stabilize the ship's failing systems. Elric leaned heavily against Selim, his frail body trembling from exhaustion and fear. "This wasn't supposed to happen," he muttered under his breath, more to himself than anyone else. "Not now." "What do you mean?" Selim asked sharply, gripping his mentor's arm tighter. There was no time for cryptic remarks. Whatever Elric knew could be vital. Before Elric could respond, Zyrathol entered the chamber, her presence commanding immediate silence. She moved with deliberate grace, her elongated form cutting through the crowd like a blade. Behind her trailed Zinker and the Lys, both visibly tense but resolute. "We are betrayed," Zirathul declared, her voice resonating with controlled fury. "Our enemies have exploited vulnerabilities within our defenses. This attack is not random, it is calculated, precise." A murmur rippled through the gathered crowd, a mix of fear and outrage. Selim felt a chill run down his spine. Betrayal implied someone close, someone trusted. But who among the Virath would dare sabotage their queen? The Lys stepped forward, her black armor gleaming ominously in the dim light. "The invaders are Krillin mercenaries," she spat, venom dripping from her words. "Scavengers hired by those who seek to exploit our weakness. They aim to destroy us before we can harness him." Her gaze flicked briefly toward Selim, making him feel like prey caught in a predator's sights. "Harness me," Selim blurted out, unable to contain his confusion. "You still haven't explained why my blood is so important. How does it tie into all this?" Zinker exchanged a glance with Zirathul before addressing Selim. "Your genetic material contains traces of the ancient entities, the ones tied to the dimensional rift. If extracted properly, your blood could awaken latent abilities within our species, granting us the power to repel these invaders and seal the rift permanently. Without it, we face annihilation." Selim stared at him, his mind reeling. Power. Abilities. It sounded too fantastical to believe, yet the desperation in Zinker's tone left little room for doubt. And if what they said was true, then his blood truly held the key to survival, for both humans and Virath alike. Elric suddenly gripped Selim's shoulder, pulling him closer. "Listen carefully," the professor whispered urgently. "There's something they're not telling you. Something I uncovered during my research years ago." Before Selim could press further, a deafening explosion rocked the chamber. The energy barrier flickered dangerously, and screams erupted as debris rained down from the ceiling. Through the chaos, a new threat emerged. A squad of Krillin mercenaries had breached the shelter, their jagged weapons glowing with malevolent energy. The Lys roared a battle cry and charged forward, her twin blades slicing through the air with lethal precision. The Virath warriors followed suit, engaging the intruders in brutal hand-to-hand combat. Sparks flew as metal clashed against alien flesh, and the confined space quickly descended into pandemonium. Selim instinctively pulled Elric behind a console, shielding him from stray blasts. His eyes darted around, searching for an escape route or anything resembling a weapon. He spotted Zirathul standing near the center of the room, seemingly unfazed by the carnage unfolding around her. Instead, she focused intently on a holographic display projected above her palm, her fingers moving rapidly over invisible controls. "What is she doing?" Selim shouted over the din. "She's activating the fail-safe protocol." Zinker yelled back, dodging a plasma bolt. "If we lose the ship, the core will self-destruct to prevent our enemies from accessing its secrets." Selim's stomach dropped. Self-destruction. That meant everyone here, including him and Elric, would die unless they acted fast. "Can't we override it?" Selim demanded, panic rising in his chest. Zinker hesitated, torn between aiding the Queen and answering Selim's question. Finally, he shook his head. "Only Zirathul has the authority to abort the sequence. But she won't, not until she ensures your safety." "My safety?" Selim echoed incredulously. "How am I supposed to survive this?" Before Zinker could reply, a shadow loomed over them. One of the Krillin mercenaries lunged toward them, its grotesque face twisted into a snarl. Selim reacted on instinct, grabbing a fallen piece of wreckage and swinging it wildly. The makeshift weapon connected with a sickening crunch, sending the creature sprawling. Breathing hard, Selim turned to see Elric staring at him with wide eyes. "You've got more fight in you than I gave credit for," the professor remarked dryly, though his tone carried a hint of pride. "No time for compliments," Selim shot back, dragging Elric to his feet. "We need to get to Zirathul. If anyone can stop this madness, it's her." Navigating through the battlefield proved harrowing. Every step brought them closer to danger. Blasts narrowly missed them, and bodies littered the ground, some Virath, others Krillin. Despite the odds, Selim pressed onward, driven by sheer determination. When they finally reached Zyrathol, she barely acknowledged their presence. Her focus remained entirely on the hologram, her expression unreadable. Selim grabbed her arm, forcing her attention. "Stop this," he pleaded. "You're going to kill us all." For a moment, Zyrathol simply stared at him, her luminous eyes filled with conflicting emotions. Then, softly, she spoke. "Do you trust me, human?" The question caught Selim off guard. Trust? After everything that had transpired, how could he possibly answer? Yet deep down, he realized she wasn't asking lightly. This was a test, a gamble with unimaginable stakes. "Yes," he said finally, surprising even himself. "I trust you." Zyrathol nodded once, decisively. With a swift motion, she deactivated the failsafe protocol, much to the visible relief of Zinker and the Lys, who had just finished dispatching the last of the Krillin attackers. But the reprieve was short-lived. Another alarm blared, louder and more urgent than before. "The rift!" Zinker exclaimed, pointing to a crackling portal forming outside the viewport. "It's destabilizing faster than anticipated." Selim followed his gaze, watching in horror as the swirling vortex expanded, threatening to consume the entire ship. Lightning-like tendrils of energy lashed out, striking nearby asteroids and reducing them to dust. Zyrathol wasted no time. She grabbed Selim's wrist, her grip surprisingly gentle despite her claws. "Come with me," she ordered. "Now." Without waiting for a response, she dragged him toward a hidden passageway concealed behind a panel. Elric tried to follow, but the Lys blocked his path. "Stay here," she commanded. "Protect the humans left behind." Reluctantly, Elric obeyed, though his worried gaze never left Selim as the Queen led him deeper into the bowels of the ship. They arrived at a small chamber containing a strange device resembling a crystalline cocoon. Symbols etched into its surface glowed faintly, casting eerie shadows across the walls. "This is the Nexus Core," Zyrathol explained hurriedly. "It amplifies biological resonance. Your blood must interface with it to stabilize the rift." Selim swallowed hard, dread pooling in his gut. "And if it doesn't work?" Her silence spoke volumes. Taking a deep breath, Selim extended his arm, bracing himself for what came next. As Zyrathol prepared a syringe-like instrument, her expression softened ever so slightly. "Whatever happens, know that your sacrifice will save countless lives," she murmured. Just as she inserted the needle into his vein, a violent tremor shook the ship. Alarms screamed louder, signaling imminent doom. The rift outside pulsed erratically, growing larger with each passing second. Then, without warning, the lights went out. The sudden darkness was suffocating, broken only by the faint glow of emergency lights scattered along the walls. Selim's breath hitched as he felt the syringe still embedded in his arm, drawing out his blood drop by agonizing drop. The hum of machinery around him faltered, and for a moment, panic threatened to overwhelm him. Was this it? Had they failed? But then, a soft blue light began emanating from the Nexus Core. It grew brighter, pulsing rhythmically like a heartbeat. Zyrathol stepped back, her eyes wide with awe as she watched the crystalline cocoon react to Selim's blood. The symbols etched into its surface lit up one by one, forming intricate patterns that seemed alive, shifting and swirling as though responding to some unseen force. Outside, the rift continued its chaotic dance, tendrils of energy lashing out indiscriminately. But something was changing. The vortex slowed, its violent movements becoming more controlled. A deep thrumming sound filled the air, resonating through the ship and reverberating in their chests. "It's working," Zyrathol whispered, her voice trembling with disbelief. "Your essence. It holds them at bay." Selim gritted his teeth against the growing ache in his arm, feeling an inexplicable pull within him. It wasn't pain exactly. More like a connection being forged between himself and the ancient entities trapped beyond the dimensional barrier. Memories flashed before his eyes. Fragments of forgotten civilizations, glimpses of beings made entirely of light, and whispers of power so immense it defied comprehension. "Hold on," Elric's voice echoed in his mind, though the professor wasn't physically present. Somehow, Selim could sense him, feel his presence urging him forward. "You're stronger than you think." Summoning every ounce of willpower, Selim focused on the task at hand. He envisioned the rift shrinking, imagined the entities retreating back into their prison. Slowly but surely, the vortex began to collapse inward, its fury dissipating like smoke in the wind. The tremors ceased, and the alarms fell silent. When the last tendril of energy vanished, leaving only the cold void of space behind, the Nexus core let out a final, triumphant pulse before going dark. Selim staggered backward, weak but alive. His vision blurred, and he collapsed onto the floor, gasping for air. Zyrathol knelt beside him, her clawed hands gently cradling his face. For the first time since they'd met, she looked vulnerable, her usual regal composure replaced by raw emotion. "You've done it," she said softly, her voice thick with gratitude. "You've saved us all." Hours later, when the immediate danger had passed and repairs were underway, Selim found himself seated in a quiet corner of the ship's medical bay. Elric sat across from him, nursing a cup of steaming liquid provided by the Virith medics. Despite everything, there was a sense of calm now, a fragile peace born from survival against impossible odds. "You knew," Selim accused, breaking the silence. His tone wasn't angry, just weary. "Back on Earth, during your research, you suspected what I am, didn't you?" Elric sighed heavily, setting the cup aside. "I didn't know for certain," he admitted. "But I had theories. When I discovered traces of organic matter in those relics, I realized humanity might not be as ordinary as we believed. You were always special, Selim. Even as a child, you exhibited qualities no other human possessed, an uncanny resilience, an ability to adapt under pressure. I thought it best to keep my suspicions to myself until I understood more. And now," Selim pressed. Elric smiled faintly. "Now, I see clearly. You are a bridge between worlds, Selim. Between species, dimensions, even time itself. Your existence proves that life is far more interconnected than we ever imagined." Before Selim could respond, the door slid open, revealing Zyrathol accompanied by Zinker and the Lys. They entered solemnly, their expressions reflecting a mixture of respect and admiration. "We owe you a debt we can never repay," Zyrathol began, addressing both humans. "Not only have you secured our future, but you've also shown us the value of trust and cooperation." The Lys stepped forward, offering a small device to Selim. "This contains data on our technology, culture, and history. Consider it a gesture of goodwill, a token of alliance between our peoples." Zinker added, "We will escort you back to your home world, ensuring safe passage. And should you ever wish to visit, you shall always be welcomed aboard the Crimson Veil." Selim accepted the device, touched by their sincerity. Yet, as he looked at Zyrathol, a question lingered in his mind. "What happens to me now?" he asked quietly. "Will I always carry this burden? This connection to something greater than myself?" Zyrathol placed a hand on his shoulder, her touch surprisingly warm despite her alien nature. "It is not a burden," she assured him. "It is a gift. One that grants you endless possibilities. Use it wisely, Selim Drake. The universe has chosen you for a reason." As the days passed and preparations for departure commenced, Selim reflected on the journey that had brought him here. From a simple engineer unaware of his true potential to a savior of two species, he had come farther than he ever dreamed possible. Though uncertainty loomed ahead, he felt strangely at peace. On the day of their return to Earth, Zyrathol accompanied them to the docking bay. As they prepared to board the shuttle, she extended her hand, not in farewell, but in gratitude. "Remember this moment," she said, "for it marks the beginning of a new era, for both our races." Selim shook her hand firmly, meeting her gaze without hesitation. "Thank you," he replied simply, "for trusting me when I doubted myself." With that, he turned and stepped onto the shuttle, Elric following close behind. As the craft lifted off, carrying them back toward the pale blue they called home, Selim gazed out the viewport at the vast expanse of stars stretching endlessly before them. He didn't know what the future held, but one thing was certain. He would face it head-on, armed with courage, knowledge, and the unshakable belief that even the smallest actions could ripple across galaxies, shaping destinies yet unwritten. And somewhere, in the depths of space, the ancient entities slumbered once more, their restless spirits calmed, for now, by the bond forged between a human and a queen who dared to hope. As the shuttle carrying Selim and Elric descended toward Earth, Selim felt an overwhelming sense of peace. The rift was sealed, the Virith were safe, and humanity had unknowingly taken its first step into a larger universe. Back on Earth, Selim stood under the open sky, holding the device gifted by the Virith. Elric placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "You've changed everything, Selim," he said with pride. "For the better." Selim smiled, gazing at the stars. He no longer feared his connection to the cosmos. It was a gift, a bridge to infinite possibilities. Somewhere among those twinkling lights, Zirathul watched over him, her faith in him unwavering. Together, they had forged hope from chaos. And as Selim looked ahead, he knew this wasn't an ending, it was a beginning. A happy one.